Salary question. I call BS on bad answers. I'm under NDA. Let's talk about this. This is referring to in a job interview or sometimes before a job interview. They ask you several standard questions, one of which is the salary question. And there's a couple of salary questions. One is, what are your salary expectations? That's pretty popular. You can expect to be asked that. Another sort of variant of it is when they say, what is your current salary? Or what was your salary in your most recent role? They want to know what you were paid in your last job. That is another variant of it. Okay, they're not quite the same question, but they're related to salary. Now, here's a comment that I've received on this channel quite a lot. I've done a couple of videos on how to answer the question, what is your current salary? And just to recap, my recommendation that people say if they're asked that direct question is to say, well, I have a personal policy of not disclosing that information because there are privacy issues, confidentiality issues. I'm sure you understand. Some variant of that is what I'd recommend people to say. And I get inundated with comments under my videos that say, well, you should just say, I'm under NDA. No, you shouldn't. No, that's a bad answer. Very bad answer. Let me explain. If you're thinking of saying that, here's a couple of things you need to know. First of all, very, very rarely does someone get their salary or their compensation put under NDA. Okay, that almost never happens. Your salary is not confidential. Okay, the only times when your salary would be under some kind of NDA, non-disclosure agreement, the only time that would happen is if you're in some exotic situation, like you've sued the company over salary and you and them have settled out of court. They may pay you a compensation, but then they say you are not allowed to disclose this and you have to sign an agreement to that effect. The other time when you could conceivably be under an NDA for your salary would be if you were in the middle of some weird union dispute or union negotiation where it was resolved and part of the resolution was they paid you something and then you can't disclose it and you're under an agreement for that. That's pretty much it. I don't know of any other situation where anyone would be under an NDA for their salary. That does not happen. It's not a thing. People can be under NDAs for many other things, like giving out trade secrets or things like that, but not for compensation. So the problem is if you go to a job interview and you tell the recruiter or hiring manager, both of them, this applies to both of those roles, recruiters or hiring managers, and you say, oh, I'm under an NDA so I can't tell you my salary. What's going on in their head is they're first of all thinking, bullshit, right? That's crap. That never happens. That's not a thing. So I can now tell that you're lying to me. You're combative and you're lying to me. So that's what that signals. That's what goes on in their head when you say that. Okay, so saying I'm under an NDA, I can't disclose my salary, is not a good answer. Okay, so I get people like commenting on that almost on a daily basis, telling me that you should say this. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. Okay. Now, don't take my word for this. Go out and verify this. Go do your own research. How often does someone have an NDA for their compensation? Very rarely. What's better is, like I said, my recommended answer for this is if you go to a job interview and they say, what's your current salary? You say, well, I'm sorry, I have a personal policy of not disclosing my compensation because of privacy issues and confidentiality issues. I'm sure you understand. And this is true because you could even talk about things like, if they really press you, you could talk about things like identity theft and fraud and stuff. It all does come into play. But that's my preferred answer. You just don't want to tell them. No offense. It's like somebody asking you in a job interview, what's your credit card number? They're not entitled to that information. You could voluntarily disclose it if you wanted to, but they're not entitled to it, right? And just so everyone knows, the reality is what you do with somebody else, like a third party, is none of their business. They're not entitled to that. They're not entitled to it by law. And in terms of etiquette, protocol, or what's reasonable, they're not entitled to it either. The reason why recruiters ask this question is because certainly with younger people or less experienced job seekers, these techniques work. You get the job seeker giving them all kinds of information that they're not entitled to that doesn't help the job seeker. It helps them to outmaneuver the job seeker, right? In terms of proposing compensation and all this kind of stuff. So that's what's going on. Hopefully that makes sense.